Hey, hydrate and welcome. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for joining us for a couple minutes for our Tuesday night message. I wish dearly that we could be playing knockout and worshiping together in our normal space, but for now we're making do. And so I think it says a lot that you're joining us tonight, where you could be doing a ton of things, online schoolwork or just scrolling Instagram. But the fact that you're joining us for a couple minutes and then hopefully for small group after means a lot to me. And I think God's going to use that time to make an impact in your life. So this is our last week of Sermon on the Mount. If you've been with us anywhere since the start of 2020, you know that we're doing this series because we want to encourage you to follow Jesus. And in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is teaching some disciples, right, which right now is kind of a bigger group, how to do that. And he's putting the rules of God that they kind of knew and connecting them to the heart of God. Because if you try to follow God's rules without understanding his heart, it's like a slow drag. Right, it's really tough. So Jesus is encouraging his disciples now to understand the heart of God behind why he wants his followers to live a certain way. If you're with us last week, we actually finished up Jesus' sayings of the Sermon on the Mount. The last part there was building your house on rock and not sand. So when the winds and storms come, that you are built, you are established. But today we're closing Sermon on the Mount by the two verses that finish up Matthew 7. This isn't what Jesus actually said, but it's in our text, Matthew 7. And I think it is a wonderful way for us to recap and to close our message on the Sermon on the Mount. So again, Jesus so far has talked about how to live a blessed life, how believers are supposed to be like salt in the earth to others, how Christ came to fulfill the law, how we're not supposed to retaliate against others and trust God. He teaches us how to pray. Right? He tells us not to lust. He tells us how to treat people with respect like we want to be treated. There's other good stuff there. If you haven't read Matthew 5 through 7, it'll take you about 10 minutes. I'd encourage you to do that. But look at these last two verses in Matthew 7. Jesus finishes teaching them, hey, build your house on rock, not on sand, right? On a solid foundation. And then to summarize all of this, the Bible teaches us, and when Jesus had finished these sayings, the crowds were astonished at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one who had authority, not as the scribes. That word in there, astonished, if you look back, it means to lose one's senses. Almost like when like thunder is struck. You know, like when you're not expecting really thunder, and you're just sitting at your dinner table, for instance, and all of a sudden thunder just starts rumbling. It strikes, right? And your silverware might start moving, and you look at people to make sure that you're not the only one hearing that. And then you get excited because you know that means like a lightning strike is about to happen. You can go see. And these people, was almost like thunder had rumbled. It had shaken them out of their senses when they heard Jesus talk. And so it was different than that of the scribes. And what the scribes would do, they were recorders. And when they would teach, they would say, well, this Pharisee has taught blank, and this Pharisee had taught blank. Those were the religious leaders of the Jews. And they used a lot of human examples and a lot of, here's what we've been doing for a long time. And so that's what this person did. And Jesus, when he taught, it wasn't like that. When they heard him teach, combining the heart of God with the laws of God, something struck them inside enough that they were astonished. For he was teaching them as one who had authority, not as the scribes. So my first for you is, have you ever been astonished by this? Have you ever been astonished by the teachings of Jesus? By the fact that he claimed to be from God? And that he said he was going to die one day, and that when he died, he was going to rise again. And that he came to seek and save the lost. And he came and said, it's not the healthy who need the doctor, but the sick. When you've looked at the story of Jesus in your life, has that ever struck you? Has it astonished you to the point where you said, I want to be a follower of Jesus? Because right now, Jesus, it said the crowds were astonished at his teaching, but at that beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says he brings his disciples with him to pray. And so right now, we think there's more than just 12 disciples here. There's a group. And as Jesus faced more opposition, that group dwindled down. Right? There are people who were astonished, but did they stick with him through the tough times? Have you been astonished enough and have a spirit in your heart enough to be where you are really a follower of Jesus in the good times and the bad? So that's the first challenge. The second challenge, though, is, these people, they could spend from here on out, they could spend the rest of their time listening to the scribes and the people who are teaching from other people's thoughts, or they could go right to the source and they could listen to Jesus themselves. Listen, I put a lot of work into preparing messages and making sure our content is secure, and we use a story or two to help you stay engaged. And there are communicators right now during your quarantine that I would encourage you to go check out. Just ask me if you think you have time to mix in some sermon podcasts in there while you're playing some video games or when you're out on a walk. I have a ton of recommendations who I think you should listen to these people, but because they're great. But have you ever for yourself dove in right here? Have you for yourself said, you know what, I respect what Nick teaches, and I like this pastor and what he says over here. Have you dived into these words for yourself? Have you studied the scriptures? You don't have to get a secondhand source to learn about God. It's here. And now one of the things we're not going to do at Hydrate is say, hey, go and read the Bible and then come back in a year and tell us how it went. We are here to help you every step of the way. Don't be like a big group of this crowd that got a taste of Jesus, a taste, and then walked away, right? They could have kept reading from him. They could have kept, well, not reading from him. They could have kept hearing him. For you and for me, we can read him for ourselves. You don't just have to have a secondhand faith where everything's coming from your parents or a pastor or student pastor. This can be yours to study. And we want to give you tools to do that, but we want you to raise your hand and say, you know what, I'm ready to study. I'm ready to find a Bible reading plan that I can do on a daily basis that fits where I'm at in my faith and can help me learn straight from the words of Jesus so that I can be thunderstruck. I can be astonished at the teachings of Jesus. Let me pray for us. Jesus, thank you that we have the Sermon on the Mount recorded, and that we don't have to guess what you want to teach, but it's available for us. And so on a beautiful morning like this, as we can imagine you speaking to a crowd from a mount, some disciples, people who are trying to realize if they wanted to keep following you or not, and you didn't give them any sissy teaching, you gave them some real hard teaching, Jesus. And some of them were so astonished that they were going to follow you no matter what. Lord, I pray that's true for everyone listening. I pray that's true for my life. Help us to recognize that, man, we should be astonished at your teaching, that we don't deserve it, but you give it to us anyway. And on the flip side, that we can get that on a first-hand basis. We don't have to wait for someone to teach it for us, but every single day, every single night, we can dive in ourselves. I pray that you give us hearts that want to do that want to study. If you're watching this as it goes live, right, Tuesday at 6, I pray that you join us like this cat, my neighborhood cat, is going to join us for Zoom small groups right after. Text me or text Caitlin if you're going to be a part. Love you.